Did you know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month? As much as some of the things happening during our time are very disturbing and challenging to navigate, in recent years, I have noticed a shift. I feel like mental illness used to be this shameful thing that you had to keep secret, and if somebody would find out, you would be seen and treated differently or like you are less than. And I have to say, I have felt encouraged by this shift I've noticed in recent years where people talking about their mental illnesses or their mental health and seeing them receive support and compassion has been very inspiring. And it's part of how I even got myself into doing something like this, a podcast where I'm publicly talking about complex PTSD. And though this podcast in and of itself is all about raising mental health awareness all the time, I want to spend some time this week sitting down and sharing what living with complex PTSD is looking like for me these days, what the challenges of having complex PTSD have been for me, and what are the gifts, what are the things that come out of my C-PTSD that I have to say give me an advantage compared to other people. And my hope is that you will be able to find this helpful and it will inspire you to also continue spreading awareness about mental health. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental illness and provide support to anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or any of the conditions or disorders mentioned in this podcast, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals or resources mentioned in this podcast are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma, abuse, or suicidal ideation, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are listening on YouTube, a gentle reminder to hit the like button and subscribe to let me know this episode was helpful. I want to officially welcome any new listeners and welcome back any of you that have returned after listening to other episodes of the podcast. It means a lot to me that you are here, and I hope you find this podcast helpful for your healing journey or your loved ones. So, check in for this week. I want to say that I have been having some deep roller coaster moments. So, I want to say towards the end of last week, I made a pretty big realization in therapy, and I kind of went through the motions with that in terms of like a little bit of denial about the information I was getting or the feedback I was receiving, and a little bit of a shame spiral. And then I started looking a little bit more into the information I got, and some of the pieces started clicking. So recently, I have been going through a bit of a label crisis, and let me explain what I mean by that. When I became aware of what narcissistic abuse was, I was definitely one of those survivors that became obsessed with figuring out what exactly do my abusers have? What do they have? And I think back then part of it was that if I could confirm that they have X, Y, or Z, then I will have the permission I need to set the boundaries, to create the distance that I need, and to make decisions that honor me. And I kind of got lost in that for a while. And I have seen other survivors go through this too. If there's anything I've noticed in survivors that are getting started in their journey is you become so fixated in figuring out what it was. And I cannot speak for other people, but I will speak for myself. A lot of the label obsession I've had throughout my healing journey is more about being able to have the term that I can look up so I can have language and I can begin to understand what is going on here. And since I have been going in and out of this phase with the label, like I'll go through times where I am obsessing about the label, not only for them, but also for me, like figuring out what I have. And I have to say, even that journey led to me becoming aware that I have complex PTSD because when I started this whole thing, I didn't even know that CPTSD existed. Then I have seen as the years go by that I go through these phases where the label matters and then the label doesn't matter anymore. And when I am going through the phase of the label doesn't matter, what it means is they're abusive. That's all I need to know. All I need to focus on is how does it feel for me to interact with them. It doesn't matter if they have X, Y, or Z or if they are diagnosed or not. At the end of the day, how does it feel to interact with them? Do I feel bad? Am I getting abused? Am I getting hurt? If the answer is yes, then that's it. That's all I need to set the boundaries and protect myself. And then this past week, I got new information, and now I'm going through the label rabbit hole one more time. And the kicker is that this particular abuser, I thought I had figured out from the get go. And this new piece of information is giving me a lot to think about, let me tell you. That being said, I think I'm going to transition the check in into what this episode is going to be this week. So I want to sit down here and share what living with CPTSD is looking like for me these days. And the reason I'm framing it that way is because, quite frankly, it changes. Like, I feel like back when I didn't even know that I had CPTSD, but I was living with it all the time, my life was very different to what it is now. And I have to say, part of it is the fact that becoming aware of having this, becoming aware of what healthy is supposed to look like, really brings into focus how unhealthy my life was and how hard it was to navigate the world. And the thing with becoming aware of those things is it really makes it hard and it's painful and it's uncomfortable. And even though I have good things that have come out of my healing journey, and I will definitely talk about those as well today, I feel like one of the challenging parts of doing this work and becoming aware that I am a survivor of abuse and becoming aware of how it impacts my life is it is painful and really sad to realize how much suffering I have been enduring and didn't even realize it. And something I've been experiencing a lot lately is just feeling the exhaustion because I'm trying to change the things. And that in and of itself is exhausting. It's so hard to be aware of these things that need to change and then doing all this work to change. And the thing with CPTSD is when the brain gets hijacked and the amygdala goes off and the alarm system starts going haywire, it's not easy to stop it. And a lot of this healing journey is slowing down and noticing that it went haywire and I acted like I always do and I did it again and I tried really hard for that not to happen the next time, and it does happen again and again and again. Quick recap for any of you that are new to the CPTSD world. So the main difference between PTSD and C-PTSD is in post-traumatic stress disorder, this is something that comes from usually a single event or a short period of time where the event or perhaps recurring events have been happening. So it could be a car accident, it could be a soldier that is on a tour for 6 months, it could be medical trauma, surviving a natural disaster. And usually with PTSD, the person will be able to tell when they're triggered what it goes back to. And I am someone who has both PTSD and complex PTSD, and I can tell you this. When it is PTSD, I can tell you exactly what it was. It was that thing that happened 2 years ago, and that's exactly where I am and where my nervous system has gone to, and that's why I'm reacting this way. And usually the trigger is something that's very closely related to. Now, with complex PTSD, one really good example I have heard Stephanie Fu use, and Stephanie wrote a memoir called What My Bones Know that I will link on the show notes. I've seen Stephanie on an interview say that CPTSD would be like, imagine being on a car accident every single day for the first 18 years of your life. And I'm going to add an extra layer to that metaphor. Imagine that you are going through all these different traumas constantly for 18 years, for example. So it's not just car accidents. You're also having medical trauma, and you also feel like you went to a war, and there's also the natural disasters, and there's all these different things. So many. So many. Some that you realize are abusive as they're happening, some that you don't even realize that they're abusive. And it's so much. There's almost like your brain cannot keep track of all the stuff. So all the trauma just keeps getting stuck in your body, and your nervous system is clocking in all the stimuli and all the triggers and all the things. But at this point, your brain can't keep track of what goes with what. And for me as an adult with complex PTSD, what it looks like is I can feel it in my body, and I can feel that my nervous system is on fire, but I might not be able to tell from what, because I am just in my living room recording a podcast. And what makes it so difficult to live with and so hard to navigate is the fact that often you don't know what is triggered, why you're feeling this way, and where the hell did your nervous system go back to. I could be at work, or I could be in my kitchen doing the dishes, and I just feel this impending sense of horror and terror. And I honestly cannot tell you exactly what it is all the time. Sometimes I can. And with the work that I have been doing, it is becoming a little bit easier to pinpoint where my inner kiddo is going to, or your amygdala if inner child doesn't resonate with you. And though I have been at this for a few years, and it has made it a little bit easier to kind of start pinpointing where it could have come from, or even pinpointing exactly what it was, I still find myself sometimes just wondering, what is it? I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm safe, seemingly safe, but I don't feel safe, and I don't know why. And that is the thing with CPTSD. That's what makes it so difficult to live with. Also, because you're so used to it, you're so used to feeling that way, it's hard to even realize that you're suffering from it. I know it sounds wild, but that is how it's been for me. So with my own CPTSD, it looks like so many things. I started therapy back in 2016-ish. And back then, all I got was, we're dealing with anxiety. We're dealing with anxiety. I want to say maybe college, I might have been a little bit suspicious that I had OCD, just based on some of my psych classes. I was a psych major in college. And my CPTSD looks like a lot of things. My CPTSD can look like anxiety. And in fact, I have taken the generalized anxiety disorder checklist, and I have scored 21 out of 21 on that one. It also looks like depression. That one, it took me a while to accept, because I don't look like, or at least I didn't feel like I tick the boxes for someone who's depressed. But now as I look back, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sad all the time. And I have that refrigerator bus depression that Patrick Dehan talks about. My CPTSD can also look like ADHD. I took an ADHD checklist, and I was surprised with some of the things that I was scoring pretty high on. And I would have not considered myself an ADHD kid. I was very focused in school, and I was doing great in terms of my academics. So now looking back, I'm realizing now how much effort it actually takes, and it has taken me to be able to focus. Like, it didn't come easy. And I sort of dismissed any possibilities of struggling with my focus and attention, just based on the fact that I was able to do it. And I didn't realize for a very long time, and I feel like I'm still realizing this, in order to focus, it takes me a lot of bandwidth, a lot. And the thing is that even with all the amount of focus and attention that I managed to somehow get away with, there's so many things that I'm not able to focus on. And I feel like there's so many unfinished projects around this apartment, and so many things I want to do that I don't finish. And in recent years, as I have been learning a little bit more about ADHD and how it presents in women, because that's been a thing that I became aware of, presents differently in the genders, and that's how a lot of women just got missed when they were younger. And I feel like I kind of fall into that camp as well. And there are definitely a lot of things that resonate with me when I hear people talk about their ADHD. And honestly, as I sit here today, I cannot tell you if I have ADHD and CPTSD, or if it's the CPTSD that makes some of the symptoms look like ADHD. It's confusing. It's really confusing. I'll give you this metaphor that I got from one of my former therapists, and I love this metaphor. And the way my therapist presented it to me was, think about your CPTSD as the head of this huge octopus. And then think about the tentacles being the other things that your CPTSD is presenting as. So if I was to use this, the CPTSD would be the head of the octopus. And then my CPTSD goes onto all these branches. And we've got the anxiety, depression, the OCD, ADHD. So many letters. Oh my God. Oh. And the PTSD, because I have that too. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. It's really hard to differentiate it and see where is what. And one thing I will say though, one thing I will admit, and this is something the same therapist told me, she was like, let's focus on the CPTSD and the trauma and see how everything else gets impacted. That will give us the information we need. I'm still at this ditty now with a different therapist. I will say that working on the trauma has helped some things. And I think, at least as I sit here today, I feel like everything that I have going on, it always goes back to the trauma. I feel like something that has been very beneficial for me is looking at the root of the problem. And as I said here today, I am diagnosed with CPTSD. I have been treating for CPTSD, and I have accepted that I have this, and I have started a podcast on having it. So these days, I would say it's still pretty exhausting. And a lot of my days right now include navigating the frustration of noticing things that I can't change in a snap of fingers. And the thing with the stage that I am in is I am noticing new things. And they're not really new. There were things that were happening. It was just not in my awareness. But now I feel like the more I keep navigating my days, the more I realize how much my life is run by the CPTSD. Also, I'm in a phase where I'm trying new things, and I'm trying the thing that feels like the most dangerous thing to do for my nervous system. And I am going against my instincts and my body saying, no, don't do that. It's dangerous, and still doing the thing. And this is in the hopes that I will create a new neural pathway, and I will start teaching my body and my nervous system that it's actually not dangerous to do this all the time, and this can be done safely. And if for any reason danger comes, I have tools to get out of the situation and manage it and protect myself. And saying that out loud sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Well, try doing it with a nervous system that is on fire because it is 100% convinced that it's not safe. Very uncomfortable to do the thing. But I'm trying to do the thing. And sometimes I don't do the thing. To be honest, sometimes I go, fuck it. I'm just going to leave it for the next time because I'm sure it will come up again. And then I have to deal with the shame that I didn't try it. It's just, it feels a lot like every path I take, it hurts and it's going to hurt. Though I've come a long way and some things that used to hurt don't hurt anymore, and not as much at least. Oh, it sucks. There's so much work to be done when you're healing from CPTSD. And here's the thing with CPTSD. It's relational healing, folks. So it's every single day. Me being here in my apartment just with myself is triggering. Me being out there in the world interacting with people, triggering as fuck, as you can imagine. It's just very hard to avoid it because every single situation I am in, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, it's just trigger land. And the thing with CPTSD, I feel like the triggers are a lot harder to avoid than the triggers from my PTSD. And granted, that's because the CPTSD stuff that has happened to me is way more. I feel like that aspect of having a hard time knowing what could trigger my CPTSD makes it really hard to know what to avoid. And at the same time, honestly, I'm kind of glad that I don't know what to avoid, because I think if I became fully aware of how much it was, I probably would not get out of bed. Or even staying in bed might be a fucking nightmare. Because I also have the entomophobia, which is the fear of the insects. So from the moment I wake up and I open my eyes, I'm like scanning the room around to make sure no insects are there. It's like, yeah, it's a whole thing. Being inside my body and living with this brain is no picnic for me. So I think so far I've covered a lot of the challenges of living with CPTSD. So these days it's feels like I am walking around almost like with my skin just raw, and it's so sensitive to like the most minute change and shift. I will say some days are better than others, and it is not all hell. There's also some things that I know are gifts from my CPTSD. And I can see how it can be triggering to hear that there are some gifts that come from my CPTSD. Stay with me. I promise I'm going somewhere. Full disclosure, I had to pause on recording because I kind of went into an OCD spiral just now. And uh, something that really gets me is that suicidal ideation that I get from having CPTSD. And it's not like I'm going to act on it. When I'm in an emotional flashback, and this is one of the main symptoms that differs CPTSD from PTSD, the emotional flashback is when the nervous system and your body and the whole system travels back in time to the traumatic event, and it feels like it's happening again. But it's CPTSD, so you probably don't even know what traumatic event is setting the whole thing on fire. And I feel like at this point, the way I see when suicidal ideation comes my way, I feel like that is the moment where my inner kid just doesn't know how else to get my attention. And it goes to the most extreme thing it can do. And the thing that it knows will freak me out the most, which is harming myself. And it sure freaks me the fuck out because I don't want to be having those thoughts. And it's very intrusive and it's very disruptive and disturbing. And it sets me on fire. And it fuels the OCD like nothing else. And I feel like as I've been doing this work, I used to get so much shame, and I still do. I still do. But the more I've been doing this work, the more I'm seeing that for what it is. And it's little by little, it's a slow burn. With healing, I'm able now to see, oh, okay, this is not about hurting me and ending me. This is about ending this really painful, traumatic, emotional flashback that I am under. And if I can place my attention on this little kid inside of me that's freaking out and soothe them and comfort them, it will go away. It will. It has every other time, and it will this time. Not gonna lie, it still freaks me out. I think one of the most triggering things about having CPTSD and trying to heal and do the thing differently and all those things is becoming aware of how much the world is just set to condition the old patterns. I feel like having CPTSD is like you're going down this waterfall at full speed, full force, going down, shooting with everybody. And for me, trying to heal CPTSD is like going, oh, okay, now I'm going to go up the waterfall and swim the other way with this waterfall that is shooting down at full force, but I'm going to swim against the current and I'm going to climb up somehow and swim up this waterfall, not go down again. And I try, and the pressure of the water is so strong that it just keeps dipping me down. And I try to swim against the current again, and I keep shooting down with the waterfall. And I get a little bit closer up. I mean, it's really small, but I keep trying to swim the opposite way. But here's the thing: all the other fishes in this waterfall are still swimming down. And there might be like a few fishes that I run into here and there that are trying to do this really hard thing that I am doing too. But the majority of the other fishes are just shooting down the thing and slamming into me, bringing me down with them. And the thing with changing things is if everybody else is still acting the same way, it's so fucking hard, y'all. If you are recovering from CPTSD, if you're recovering from anything, if you're trying to do something different than what you have done your entire life, with or without CPTSD, that's no small feat, y'all. You know this. And then if you have CPTSD on top of that, fuck. Oh, it hurts. It hurts. Let me tell you about the things that have worked. I have tried a lot of things. I'm going to try to think about things as I have used them through the years and try to land at what is working for me the most these days. So I started therapy in 2016 and I did talk therapy for many years. And there are benefits for talk therapy. I am very self aware and I have heard therapists point this out about me, and I know I am self aware. And I feel like talk therapy would sometimes help me make some epiphanies, like even saying the thing out loud would help me realize things or maybe see a blind spot. And if the therapist is giving me feedback, then I get to hear the blind spots that I am experiencing. Because let me tell you something, I can be as self-aware as I can be, and I'm pretty up there in the self-aware scale. I'm still a human being who has blind spots, and there's things that I fail to see. Being self-aware doesn't mean I see everything. It just means that I am paying a lot of attention to my behavior and my impact on things. At least that's how I see my own self-awareness. Then I want to say that starting therapy, like trauma informed with a trauma trained therapist, was a game changer. And that was important because it wasn't so much just talk therapy. There was also an addition in terms of embodiment and exercises to increase my body awareness and doing mindfulness and bringing awareness to sensations in my body. Like that was really beneficial for me, especially as someone who intellectualizes a lot. And I guess that's where my self-awareness can bite me. Like it's more of like a cognitive self-awareness. I spend a lot of time inside my brain thinking about the stuff, but in terms of my body, the awareness was not so much there. And I feel like adding that somatic piece, the body work, was very beneficial for me. Another thing I have found very helpful in my therapy is doing experientials. So think about experientials like an exercise where you get to re-experience a traumatic event or recount the experience, but this time you will get a different outcome. So if you're doing this in therapy, it could look like doing an exercise with your therapist where you're writing a letter to the abuser and you're saying to them all these things that happened and how it made you feel and all these things. And this time, instead of your abuser interrupting you, like not even two sentences in, to gaslight you and deny and do all the things they usually do and abuse you more, this time the professional can witness. You get to say the whole thing out loud. They get to react, advocate for you. And there's so many ways of doing these experientials. There's so many different applications. You can do them with an individual therapist. You can do them in group therapy. And I was in a therapy group and got to do some experientials with that group, and highly beneficial. It really, really worked for me. And I think the reason is because they say your nervous system doesn't know the difference between reality and fiction. That's why I need to be careful with the shows that I watch, because my nervous system can kind of clock things in like it's happening right now. The same goes the other way. My nervous system doesn't actually know the difference between me reading a letter to my abuser, imagining them sitting on an empty chair, versus actually sitting down with them and trying to read the letter to the actual abuser sitting there. And that is why experientials can be very beneficial. And I think that's the magic of the experientials. Another tool that I have found extremely helpful, and this one I want to say is probably the most consistent and the one that I am able to do the most at my own pace. This is the dialoguing technique. And for anyone who's new to this, it's basically a form of journaling, but it's a little bit different. I believe this might be used by more than one therapy modality, but I found it through the RRP therapy modality, and RRP stands for Relationship Recovery Process. So this looks like I open my journal and I put the pen on my dominant hand and I start writing from the voice of my inner adult. And I ask questions to my inner kiddo. And when my inner kiddo is going to answer, I switch the pen to my left hand, my non-dominant hand. And now I'm writing and it looks like chicken scratch. Sometimes I can't even tell what it says and I have to like really look at it to figure it out. But that's not the point. The point is to do bilateral stimulation, which is you want to stimulate both sides of your brain. When trauma happens, most of your brain goes offline and your amygdala and your emergency system is on, like on steroids. And that can lead to the trauma kind of like getting stuck in your brain and not getting fully processed because not your entire brain is on to be able to process this big thing. So with dialoguing, you are countering that. You're stimulating the entire brain. You're going left to right, left to right. And I know some alternatives for people who cannot write with both hands is like tapping, perhaps with one hand while the other is writing, or I think anything that you can do that can stimulate your left and right side of the brain is really what you want to be shooting for when doing something like this. And when I do this using the writing technique, I often surprise myself with what my inner kiddo says back. She's still me. It's still me. Like I'm still writing. I'm just writing with my other hand, but there's something about doing that exercises and doing that back and forth that just yeah, it's really wild. Like the things that I have realized through the dialoguing, and a lot of the questions are about where did you go back to, and can you tell me of a time when you felt as scared as you do now, and what was happening then, and then advocating for that kid and validating the fear and the terror. And of course, you feel that way after what happened to you, and of course, you're scared now, and it's okay. And you're not wrong for feeling scared, and you're not wrong. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Like it's a lot of back and forth, and think of it like parenting. That's really what it is. A lot of parenting. And something that has been beneficial about this technique is this is something I can do at any time on my own. I don't need to wait 2 weeks to see my therapist to do this with them. I don't need to be in the group to be able to do this. This is something I get to do on my own when I'm struggling, especially, and it really helps. I feel like that has been a consistent tool, and it was hard at the beginning to make the time commitment, and I still struggle with the time commitment. And at the beginning, it was hard because I feel like my inner kiddo was very skeptical of me. And between the dialoguing and the experientials, I have been able to show her I mean business. I'm not just saying I love you and I'm going to be here for you without meaning it. Like, I am not going anywhere. And I will continue doing the hard thing time and time again for as long as it takes. And it's not like we're off to the sunset and we don't feel triggered anymore. And I don't feel like she's done being skeptical, and I'm definitely not done doing the work. And dialoguing is one of those things where like I almost need to like remind myself, like I sometimes forget how beneficial that can be. And then I'll do a session and go, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Why am I not doing this every single day? But instead of judging myself, I am going to also give myself credit for the fact that I've been doing dialoguing for a bit now. It's been almost 2 years and a half. And at this point, I'm like buying journals in bulk because I just keep going through them. And that's okay. I think that's well worth the investment. So, part of having CPTSD for me includes magical thinking. And I know that in the ADHD community, they have a different name for something like this. But basically, for me, what magical thinking is it's basically like not being able to accurately predict how much time something is going to take, or understanding how much time it actually takes to do something. And this shows up for me in many ways. One way is miscalculating how much it's going to take me to travel from my home to whatever my destination is, how much prep time before a meeting. I will start a project and think that it's going to take me 10 minutes and it's nowhere near close to how long it takes. And it totally shows up in this podcast all the time. I sat down with the intention of recording a 30-minute or less episode this week, and I ended up talking for a long time. We're talking like an hour and a half. And even though I'm going to edit things down, I am at Wednesday night as I am recording this extra bit. And basically, I've decided that instead of pushing and forcing and trying to finish this thing as one episode, I'm just going to make an accommodation for myself and split it into 2 parts. So this is going to be the conclusion of part 1. And then I invite you to come back next week for part 2, where I'm going to continue talking about complex post-traumatic stress disorder and how it shows up in my life. And I'll keep giving you more healing tips, and we'll take it from there. And I hope you are able to find something helpful from part 1 and stay right where you are. The healing invitation for this week is coming right up. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to think about. What is your relationship with your own mental health? How are you prioritizing your mental health? I remember the days when it was not even on the radar. A lot of my awareness has included realizing how much I was struggling and how much bandwidth I was spending to get things done because I didn't realize that I was struggling with mental illness. Something that can get missed during an awareness day or an awareness month is focusing on prevention. Mental Health Awareness Month is not just about the illnesses, it's also about taking care of the actual health. This means you don't have to wait until you develop mental illness to begin taking care of your mental health. I love prevention. And we live currently in a system that tends to get involved when things are going really bad and when the illness is just set in stone. And I am a firm believer that getting involved way before things get bad can save lives. As you navigate this month, I invite you to become aware of how you have been taking care of your mental health. Is it something you're aware of? Is it something you don't think about? Is it something you've been proactively working on? There is no right or wrong answer. The most important part is to start becoming aware of our own patterns so we can start determining if there are any changes that need to occur. There are some things that need to increase, some other things that maybe we don't need as much right now. And that's the thing about mental health, it's ebb and flowing all the time. Also, I want to encourage you to share this episode and share this podcast to help me spread awareness about complex PTSD. Please let me know in the comments how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform that you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think could find this podcast helpful. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation via PayPal. I want to thank you in advance for your support. A little can go a very long way in helping the podcast reach more survivors that could benefit from finding this content. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you take care of your own mental health. It is time for our farewell affirmations. I invite you to repeat after me. I welcome the belief that I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for your presence.